Oh, hey, girlfriends. Welcome to another edition of Shameless Ambition, the podcast, and happy Friday. I am Justine Eno.
And I'm Lynsey Justine.
And today we're coming at you with fear.
Fear!
In the best way. So we're going to talk about feeling the fear and leaning in anyway today, and all sorts of aspects of life. I know I have lots of notes from career to motherhood to relationships. So just all things fear.
Well, I mean, fear can be crippling for some people and can really hold them back from making decisions, from taking risks, from pursuing goals, simply because they're afraid. I know it's definitely happened to me before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it would be so cool if we could all just like have the mindset of a 3-year-old. Camera clean. Of a 3-year-old, because, or a 2-year-old even. I think of my daughter Aspen right now, and she has zero fear.
Oh, really?
Like, just in the world, right? She's like, oh, I'm going to step in this bucket. Oh, I'm going to do this, and just figure out what happens after. There's absolutely zero fear, and I think that the fear is actually, like, installed in us throughout our lives of, like, watching a bad show, having a bad experience, watching someone else have a bad experience, you know, like, these things, like, kind of, like, grow on us as we become adults. And I think that I have it wrote down here, the more we cave into fear, the more it wins going forward. So I use like public speaking as an example, right? So if you're too scared to do it one time, you're going to be even more scared to do it the next time.
Absolutely.
So it kind of just builds on if you don't face that fear right away, it just makes it more extreme the next time.
Well, and the more you face it, though, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're afraid of public speaking, I highly encourage you to get out there, girlfriend, and find an audience, feel the fear, and do it anyways. Because once you've broken that ice, you'll feel more confident next time. You still might be afraid, but at least you know that you survived last time.
Public speaking is probably one of the best examples to use for fear, because it's where I first drew on, actually, when we were talking about the subject, because everyone's scared to public speak. I think that's a huge misconception. I think that if anyone's like, oh, I'm not nervous at all, it's like, you have a bit of nerves, no matter how many times. Like, I would be intrigued to ask, like, the Brene Browns, the Tony Robbins, the people who do it like daily, to be like, do you still get nervous, right? Yeah. I think nervous, we've talked about this before, is like, it still means you care, right? But that all aside, like, there's still some nerves when you walk out there, no matter how seasoned you are, and some fear. But then you stand up there and you look out, and for me, I just like acknowledge that every single other person sitting out in that crowd would be just as nervous as me.
Right.
And they're giving me the credit just for getting up there.
Yeah.
Not even to hear what I have to say. I just get credit for standing up there. Right. Even if I do mess up, because everybody knows how vulnerable and scary that is. So that's where I rest assured in public speaking.
Yeah, I get into a similar headspace of like, you know, if somebody's judging me for putting myself out there, for taking the risk, for facing my fears and doing it anyway, then they're probably not somebody I really want to be associated with.
They're not in the arena with you.
They're not in the arena with me, exactly. And it's just, I rest safe in that knowledge, knowing that I'm just putting my best foot forward, and that's really all I can do. So
yeah, I have an analogy for fear. I say it's false energy appearing real. So I trick my brain. So I'm like, it's not really fear. Like, what are you actually feeling? Right. You know, like, are you nervous? Are you scared of judgment? Are you, you know, like, what is actually like the root of the fear? Right. And that usually helps work through it too.
Well, and I think there's so many different kinds of fear as well, right? Like, there are times when we're just genuinely afraid and like
fight or flight,
exactly. Like, that's real fear. But then there are times where we're just having the wrong conversations in our head, and we're not saying the right words to ourselves, and we're making something into a bigger deal than it really is. And then it really is that false energy appearing real.
Yeah, I can say, like, looking back, I don't think there's a time where I felt genuine fear and not dove in and regretted it after.
What do you mean?
Like, been so scared and then still done it and then regretted doing it.
Right.
Like, that's never happened. There's always been growth or accomplishment at the end of going through that fear, whatever it is, in whichever situation, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I highly recommend walking through the fear, whatever it is.
Feeling the fear and doing it anyway, honestly, no matter win, lose, or draw, it results in such a powerful life learning lesson and a powerful shift in who we are as women, because we know we've just tackled something that we were genuinely afraid of and we were scared to do, but now we're stronger because we did it. And
even if you fall,
exactly.
We were at a conference this past weekend, and I biggest quote takeaway for me for sure was like, even if you fall, you're still moving forward.
That's right.
I was like, oh yeah. Like faceplant, you still made it. Like whatever your height is.
I remember Emma introduced the concept of failing forward to me a few years ago when I was going through a particularly rough time and just really afraid of a lot of things that was going on in my life. And she said, you know what, Lynsey, like, even if you're failing, you're still failing forward. And it just, totally changed my perception on how I viewed my fear of failure. For sure.
And I mean, like, any successful person knows without a doubt there's no success without failure, right?
That's right.
So I think you fail like 9 times out of 10 and then you succeed that 1 time out of 10, right? Like, it's that constant, like, never giving up. So, and I think the same with fear is, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So you can't grow in your comfort zone. That's your comfort zone. You're already there. So if you want to do the growth, you have to get into that discomfort and that fear to do the growth. And that's where it comes from.
That was the exact conversation I was having with myself the day we were invited to speak at the Women in Business luncheon 30 minutes before we had to be on stage. And I remember this immediate rush of excitement and thinking how incredible this would be for us. And then we were in the car and I was like, holy shit, girlfriend. We're about to enter on stage in front of 200 women in our community and we are
not prepared.
And so, we just put on Scotty Doesn't Know and had a good jam rock out session, and that alleviated my nerves. But as much as I love public speaking, I was definitely afraid that day.
Well, I think it was because too, like, we come into these podcasts with like 24 hours of preparedness. Like, we usually talk about the day before what we're going to talk about, just so we can get our thoughts together and we're not super scattered. But that day, we had just finished filming the podcast. Yeah. So we were like ready to decompress, chill out, like we usually do. We have like a little wind down ritual that you and I do after the podcast. We were about to do that and we were like, okay, switch gears. And like, what are we going to talk about?
Right.
Like,
well, and thankfully we were already planning on going to the luncheon. So we were at my house and you brought over a really cute outfit that day.
Yeah, I wasn't in like my blueberry sweatsuit.
Within 5 minutes, we were stage ready. We went from, dressed in our sweatpants and jeans and stage ready and just had a quick chat about what we were going to talk about. And I remember feeling safe knowing that I was hitting that stage with you. And so that helped alleviate some of my fears in a sense of, okay, well, I mean, no matter what happens, at least if we fall flat on our face, we're falling together.
Totally.
But I was so proud of us that day. We remember the vibration we were on after that speaking engagement, and that all came because we felt the fear and did it anyways.
And since, how many months has that been? I was pregnant.
I was like October.
I don't remember. Yeah. Honestly, it was
small business week. Yeah, that's October.
But since then, I can say we've had countless encounters with other women who were at that event, and some we don't even, well, especially me, because I'm not a Grand Prix veteran like Lynn's, but some people we both don't even know.
Right.
And just that were there and have came up to us and been like, wow, that was so crazy. And almost everyone says, I can't believe you did that with no notice. So that was special too, right? To know that we just like improv'd that. But that, I was scared. I think I was a little more comfortable because literally I think I knew a handful of people in the room. So I was like, well.
You know what though, for me, even knowing a lot of women in the room, I wasn't really focused on them. I was really focused on the conversation we were having and just making sure that it felt like we had invited 200 women into our living room to sit with us. I just really wanted to be in that moment and invite them into the experience of what it's like to sit with us while we record a podcast or sit with us while we're just hanging out, having girlfriend time. And I think because we were so comfortable together, it did feel natural and easy in the moment. But
we essentially just had a conversation on stage.
Exactly. About women empowerment and how much we love women. But yeah, like even this past weekend at the Hyperdrive conference, I was wildly prepared for that speaking engagement. However, 10 minutes before, palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on my sweater already, mom's spaghetti. Just kidding.
It wasn't. It was like beef Wellington. No, I'm just kidding.
Last night's beef Wellington. But no, like I, as much as I was confident and ready, I still had that element of nerves and fear. And
we all do. It's so vulnerable, right? To get up on a stage and be in front of everybody. My biggest advice, I mean, if we're not talking about public speaking necessarily today, but my biggest advice in that is to be like, have fun with yourself.
For sure.
Up there. What do they call it? The kind of humor where you make fun of yourself. I'm just, you know.
Oh, self-deprecating?
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm glad I didn't try to say that as well. Because that would have been self-deprecating. Whatever. Yeah. But yeah, just making fun of yourself, especially if you mess up. Invite the humor into the room because it just makes it a lot lighter and feel lighter for everyone in that room too.
Well, I've told you the story. I've maybe even shown you the video of Ryan walking off stage in front of like 6,000 students.
And then swearing.
It's so good. It's on YouTube. If you really want to find it, you can find it. But yeah, he just owned it in the moment. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, oh, if dude can fall off stage and just bounce back up and carry on with his day, like that's wildly inspiring.
Well, and that's what you have to do. That's right. You can't like run off stage in those moments. That makes it worse because then you still have to face those people later. So you might as well, you might as well just jump up and be like, well, shit, guys, that was embarrassing. So let's keep going.
Yeah.
Because we all face those moments, right? I think like it gets down again to vulnerability, and we're all human, and we all face some of that shit regardless at some point. So
I think it makes people more endearing when they own their mess ups, their mistakes, their, you know, little mishaps that happen, not only just in public speaking, but just in life and business in general, that, you know, we are all just human. And I think that there's a safety and security in acknowledging that. And when we're afraid that we made a mistake, it's like, hey, everybody makes mistakes. So
I think I've said this before, but there's a lot of power in owning your mistake before someone asks you to own it as well. So
that's such an excellent point.
Yeah, and I've said that to Aria quite a bit too, especially with her and Maisie, when they get into like little tiffs, and she'll come home and be like, Mom, I think I might have hurt Maisie's feelings today. And I'm like, okay, and we talk about it, and then I'm like, apologize tomorrow. Even if she's not going to ask for that apology, her feelings might not have been hurt, but there's so much power in owning your actions before someone makes you accountable for them.
Well, and then you can let go of the weird feeling that you're holding on to because you just acknowledge it, nip it in the bud. Like you and I do this all the time where it's like, hey, did I say that the wrong way? I just got a weird vibe from you. Like, are we okay? Just checking in. And I think that that's such a courtesy to give to the people in your life. And then you spend less time feeling afraid that you said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, because you just acknowledged it.
Well, I'm festering in like the I tell myself story, right? Like where then things get bigger because you're assuming, and you know, it just goes down the rabbit hole. But so that was, we kind of talked about fear in public speaking. Where do you feel fear other places in your life?
I feel fear in taking big risks. However, it's like one of my favorite things to do. I love change. I've talked about this lots on the podcast, but I just get such a rush and a thrill from making big moves in life, whether that be personally, professionally. But there's always an element of fear of, is this the right decision? Mm-hmm. We have families, we have lives to worry about, you know, retirement to plan, and we're not retiring anytime soon.
I'm still in my 20s. What are you talking about? Just kidding. I'm not.
Well, don't worry about it, Jessica. The podcast is going to blow up and we're going to retire early anyways. So it's all good. That's the plan.
Retirement plan.
But you know, there's big risks and little risks, right? Like starting the podcast, super low risk. We just hung out and propped up my computer on an ironing board and hit record.
We are leveling up.
Right? In our awesome new studio.
Yeah, we are.
But then there's the big professional risks that come with a lot of repercussions, some better than others. And, I think we've all been burned a few times in our lives by making a big decision or taking a big swing and not necessarily having it connect. So that's definitely an area where I feel fear in life, but I try to just work through it in a way that allows me to make sense of it.
Yeah, I feel like my decisions on a daily aren't very like life or death or financial or fear. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so heavy in the fear. I usually make Tyler make those decisions because I'm like super indecisive. I go down like 20 different paths. If there's like a really big decision to be made, like I overanalyze and it's not my strong suit to make those like really, really big decisions. Tyler makes most of them, especially with the business, which affects everything else in our life. So I feel lucky that I'm kind of off the pressure cooker.
This is one of those things that I love about just our friendship and, us as couples, because I'm your relationship. Exactly. I'm such a quick decision maker, and I'm usually pretty good with whatever decision I make in the moment, whereas Mike needs time, and he needs facts, and he needs space. He reviews, and he lost sleep for about 2 weeks one time trying to decide what type of winter tires to put on my Explorer. I would have had that decision made in 1 minute flat, but
the counter.
Exactly. But that is something that I love and respect and admire about him, and you as well, because for people like me and Ty that can make decisions so quickly, sometimes it's really nice to have that check and balance of like, okay, but what about this? And did you think about this? And have we considered this? Because sometimes those conversations just don't happen.
For sure. Yeah. Tyler's mentality is like ask now or do now and ask permission or forgiveness later. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Totally. Is essentially his motto in life. And I'm like, well, let's use our manners. And like let's ask first, please. But it's okay. Like Lynn said, it's a healthy balance. But my fear calls or my check-ins with fear usually come at a smaller cost, which is I'm grateful for. But we still feel them, right? Like they still go through us the same way. They just might not have as much weight as a repercussion in the decision necessarily. But yeah, I feel I was going to bring this up, but so we have alluded to, we went to a conference last weekend in Jasper, the Hyperdrive Women Summit.
Yeah.
And it was great. First time in Jasper, so that was great. But anyway, I felt fear on the Thursday morning. I was anxious to no end. And I think it's also heightened because I'm pregnant. But leaving Aspen, and not that it's not hard leaving Aria, but I can communicate with Aria. We can text, we can phone call, so it's a lot easier. But it was leaving Aspen, and I had all these fears going through my head of like, I told Lynsey once we got to Jasper, I was like, I was so scared we were just going to drive off the cliff. Like, so super irrational, comes from probably a place of fear and anxiety as well. But what I wanted to speak about is I think that as moms, we always go through a version of that or a severity of that when we leave our kids. It's like stretching the umbilical cord, right? Like we're getting really far from them. And if we're not next to them, how can we protect them? It's like...
Well, especially when they're little too. Like it's, different for you right now because Aspen she's not even 2, you're 7 months pregnant, and you're just in that stage of life where your kids need everything from you. You are their everything. Whereas Sophia and Maisie are like 11 and 9 and they just run around and take care of themselves and have fun with dad.
The pictures Lynsey got of our girls over the weekend with Mike, I'm like, they're like on the snow hill in shorts and pulling each other through puddles.
Just being ridiculous. And so in that sense, I have kind of moved into this new stage where I don't feel those same fears, but I'm completely
sympathetic
to yours.
But you've been there.
Yeah, I've been there, exactly.
Been there.
I've definitely felt that.
What I wanted to speak to about it, though, is I do have some people in my life who feel this fear quite heavily, but they let it win every time. And I'm not going to name them, because if they're listening, they know who they are.
Right.
And that's okay. And I'm not dissing you. But I do have to honestly say, in my opinion, the more you let that win, the worse it gets the next time you go to leave them.
Absolutely.
Like if I would have texted you Thursday morning and said, hey, Lynn's, like, I'm just not feeling it. I can't leave the kids. Like, blah, 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 blah. You would have understood. You would have had my back. But the next time I would have went to leave them, it would have been 10 times harder.
Right.
Because I let it win.
Yeah.
I think you have to really, like, in those cases, be assured that's, like, what's meant to be is meant to be. And go.
And you got to live your life.
You do.
Your kids need a happy mom. And I think it's so important as women that we do the things that fulfill our cup and make us happy and recharge the batteries, because you know, we talked about this last week. You're still you after you have kids. And if you just turn off everything that makes you feel good because you're too afraid to leave your kids, or you feel like somebody else can't raise them the same way that you can, you're going to miss out on so much in life. And you'll just lose a little bit more and more of your identity every time you don't go.
Well, and it makes it like your kids need to be able to rely on other people, right? Like I said to Lynn's on the drive, I was like, yeah, I know they're not going to be fed the way I would feed them or put to bed at the same time I would, you know, like they're going to be way off kilter, but they're loved, they're fed, and they're taken care of. So
that's right.
All good. I'll fix the rest when I get home. And I was pleasantly surprised that Tyler did try to clean. So
awesome.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I mean, it was still, I had chores to do, but it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Job,
so yeah.
Well, he only had Aspen basically all weekend.
Yeah, he didn't have the messy one. Yeah. And he also had Sam come, and I'm pretty sure he like swindled her into cleaning.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, but shout out to Sam. But yeah, so that's where I feel a lot of fear with my kids right now. But that's, again, the stage I'm at in life. And again, like, same advice as with the public speaking, is you really just got to lean into it. And
well, if you would have called me on Thursday morning and were having this fear and telling me that, you know, no, I'm not going to come, I'm afraid to leave Aspen, I really would have tried to talk you through it
for
first,
sure. Yeah.
Without just accepting, because I think that's important as girlfriends, that we know when to provide that little gentle nudge of saying, are you sure? I know we all want to be super supportive all the time and just be like, okay, no problem, girlfriend, I got you. But sometimes it really is that the extra 8 minutes to talk through it and just get to the root of what that fear is and try to alleviate it together, right? And so, I don't know.
It was great. We didn't drive off a cliff.
We did not drive off a cliff.
No.
We had to pull back. I went to pass a semi-truck on the highway. And as soon as I pulled out from behind him, Justine jumped and it scared
There was a car!
Like, way far away, though. Like, but it just instantly made me hit my brakes.
With Lisa and Brittany, you're like, in the back after. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm really sorry. That was a little
I am
too
an
soon.
excellent driver, girlfriends.
You are.
But, it was a moment where I had to laugh.
Yeah.
On the topic of being at women's events and conferences, let's talk for a minute about the fear that we feel with other women or showing up to events like that are all women, because I know, and I received a few messages from women from the weekend that said they had come totally alone. They were totally nervous, but they were so happy that they had went. And how do women work through fear like that of stepping into that arena?
I think you have to sit in it. Again, like,
right.
You do. And I always think it's so powerful if you've never been to especially all women's conference or event, I highly suggest doing it, especially one that's over a few days.
Right.
Because if you really pay attention, like you're focusing on how the women behave when they walk in that first day versus how they leave each other that last day.
It's so
it's
cool.
Night and day.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because we're all the same. You know, we walk in. Even I messaged the event coordinator because I was coming with Lynn's, but we didn't buy our tickets together. And obviously, I was going more for the supportive side of like, I want to sit with her so I can be like, you okay? You're good? Ready? But I messaged her and be like, hey, just in case Lynsey and I aren't sitting together, can you place us together? So even I did it, of being like, where's my spot?
Right.
Because we don't want to find our own spot, because that means we have to put ourselves out there and pick a spot. But I think it's really like, again, leaning in and acknowledging that at least 80% of the crowd is feeling the same way as you.
Yeah, and I think acknowledging that if you're going, especially to an all-women's event, that they should all be there for the same reason. To connect with other women.
And there might be some, like a few.
There's always a few.
Bad in the bunch. And that's okay. Gut check that, right? Obviously, you'll know if you're like having a conversation and you feel like you're being not received well, go find a different table. But you really just got to lean in. I get it. I'm so there with the fear of other women and the fear of being judged and being vulnerable and being, your real self. But there's so much power once you step into that you get back from other women, because it's like this exchange of vulnerability, and then that builds connection. And
like this energy charge, right? Everybody walks into that room with a certain amount of energy, or maybe they walk in with no energy and they're just kind of needing their cup filled up. But as that energy all comes together and as the conversations start happening, you can feel the spark ignite, and there's just so much fuel being added to that fire throughout the weekend. And I love the way you acknowledged everybody walking in on Friday and the way they walk out on Sunday are two very different experiences, because we grow together.
Well, Friday it's together. Like sly smiles at each other, like, hi, can I sit here? And then Sunday it's like, give me a hug, like,
how was your night?
Right, like it's just, you start to like break open these relationships and make new connections and learn so much. I tapped out at this last conference we went to on Saturday night. I was too pregnant, too sore. I was like, give me that bed and a bath and Criminal Minds marathon on TV. Which I have to say, all the women in that room were so supportive of me going to nap.
For sure.
Like, absolutely. Like every woman was like, go nap, girlfriend. But Lynn's comes back up to the room just like vibrating with like energy. And she's like, oh my God, like, and telling me about all these conversations she was having. And great, like collaborative, creative conversations.
Amazing conversations.
That you don't always get in a different setting, right? Because in this setting, all these women are here for the most part to do that, to be collaborative, to be creative, to share each other's ideas and energy and to support one another. So it's a really unique place to put yourself in.
I sat with a very cool table of ladies when you went and snuck up to the room there, and I had more vulnerable business conversations with this table of women than I've had in like the last year, aside from the conversations I have with you and my close girlfriends. But I felt so safe and seen, and I felt supported, and then I was able to lend the same to them, discussing their life and their business and their goals. And each woman at the table came from a completely different background, in a completely different lane, and everything about the conversation was mature, respectful, inspiring, and it was just a different caliber. And I'm so happy that I got to sit with all those ladies.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that if you took any one of those other ladies' ideas and moved forward with it in your business, or had they taken one of your ideas and moved forward with it in their business, that you gave them willingly. There's no competition. There's no jealousy. It's like, go girlfriend. Yeah. Like, that's the cool space you're in, is like, I literally said to the table that night, I was like, girlfriends, you can't compete with me because I want you to win too. And that is my vibe. I am not here to compete with you. We're not here to compete with you. We would rather collaborate with you and cheer you on and support your success, because there is more than enough room for all of us to succeed. And when you go to a women's event like that, that's what you get out of it. That should be the vibe. If that's not the vibe, that's not the event. And we have been at an event where that was not the vibe. Not the vibe. And that's cool. We'll just not go to that event again. But you don't know unless you try these things. And to understand that some are going to be better than others, and you can leave it at the door. Yeah. You can walk out and just leave it at the door. And be you paid for the ticket. That's right. So if it's like not your vibe and you're like, okay, this is not where I need to be, get up and leave. Like, literally, you paid for the ticket. No one's holding you hostage, but lean in. I definitely like suggest to lean in, because even if it's an icky conference that you don't like, which we're not speaking of, like the one we were at last weekend was amazing. But if that is where you find yourself, I still encourage you to lean in, because you might find some growth. You might. You never know, right? So,
and be okay with the fact that you don't have to be friends with everybody there. You don't even have to like everybody there to learn from the people there. I saw something online this week that I just fell in love with, and it said, normalize not liking people without conflict. It's no beef. You're just not my vibe.
Totally.
And I thought that was so brilliant, because it is totally okay to just not like somebody because the vibe just doesn't match. But that doesn't mean that there's a conflict there or a negative energy. Yeah. It's just not a relationship that I might pursue.
Yeah, or like different morals, different ethics. It's all good. But it doesn't mean you have to like just hate the person and despise everything they do because of that, you know, for sure. Or be mean or catty or whatever that looks like. But yeah, this conference this past weekend, it had an eclectic group of women, and it was great.
It was great.
Be in that space. And I loved on the I like Holly, the lady who coordinated to put the event together. On the open day, she was like, wear pajamas if you want tomorrow. And I was like, this is great. This is my conference. Like, I can do this, right? Like, zero pressure off that. So
I guess the message we would love to share in this lane is, if you're feeling intimidated by a women's event or a conference or putting yourself out there in that way, it's actually an excellent opportunity to feel that fear and do it anyway. Do it anyway. Just push yourself into it. Dive in head first. Be there. Be present in the moment. Use the opportunity, because magic can come out of it.
Well, and like I said, so many other women are in that same boat as you, feeling that nervousness walking in on that first day, right? It's not just you. Again, you're not special. I'm just kidding. You are. But you're not unique to that feeling usually in those settings. Lots of people are feeling that. So lean into that. Like, you're in the same energy together. So say hi.
Say hi. You know what? I feel like we should kind of just like dive a little bit into imposter syndrome, as we're talking about fear and we're talking about showing up and pushing yourself outside of the box. What would you say to women that struggle with imposter syndrome? Because I do think that imposter syndrome is a root of a fear.
Well, yeah, it's a fear of not being liked for your authentic self, for sure, right? Like, you're
feeling like you don't belong.
Yeah. What would I say? You do belong. Someone said it, I think, recently, and if you know, let me know. But it was just like, no one can bring your energy. Like, your energy is your energy. So bring that. Bring your real self. When you're your real self and you're not pretending to be anyone, one, you don't have to remember anything because it's you. But more to this, along the lines of like feeling like you don't belong. I feel like it's so much internal work, unfortunately. Right. I really do. Like, without sounding mean or bitchy about it, we've all been there. I just think that it takes a lot of internal work to work through that, whether it's therapy or on your own or however you do that, because it's something inside you that you're not feeling strong enough to stand in that room. And you do. I'm here to tell you, you do deserve to stand in that room, however you're showing up. But you have to have the confidence in that.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the authenticity piece, in the sense of, you know, showing up as your most authentic self is how you battle imposter syndrome. And it really does start with acknowledging on the inside that something isn't feeling authentic for a reason. And this makes me think of, I was presenting at an insurance conference like, I don't know, years ago. And I remember feeling so intimidated by that room. I wasn't in a room full of girlfriends. I was in a room full of old white dudes. And it felt very intimidating to me. And even while I was presenting, I was second guessing everything that was coming out of my head. And should I be here? And like, I really was having a major attack of imposter syndrome in that moment. Yes, I was smart enough to be there. Yes, I got that opportunity all on my own. Yes, I deserved to be there, but it didn't feel authentic to me. It wasn't a concept or a topic that I was like super jazzed to be presenting on. It felt like more of like a kind of check mark on my resume than anything.
Because you weren't passionate, like you weren't really passionate.
No, exactly.
It wasn't like, it didn't, no, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say that on a podcast. That's too inappropriate. Yeah, it did make you giddy, right?
No.
Like so, I think that's where, it's, you have to be your authentic self. And the second, not that you should be looking for external validation, but I know that it always helps when you're being your authentic self and someone validates that in that moment. It gives you like that little like, okay, I can continue just being me. It's okay to be me, and
absolutely
to sit in that. I think that sometimes, and you might like really disagree with me on this, but if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you might not have done your research.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that.
So, and I've been there, so I can actually, you might get a laugh out of this if you like accounting. Went to business school, and I got a job right out of college as like payroll, or it wasn't payroll, it was AP, accounts payable. Woohoo. But anyway, so I was sitting in my interview, and my manager, who did end up hiring me, handed me a piece of paper, and he's like, hey, Justine, debits and credits, put them on each. I totally bombed that shit. Like,
oh, no.
I really messed it up, but he still hired me anyway. So I think it was because I was cute. But, and I figured out debits and credits. I had a sticky note on my computer, but like, you think I would have known after going to business school. But anyway, but I think that is a part of imposter syndrome, is showing up unprepared. And if you're not in your lane, and that's okay to not be in your lane, but just own it. So if someone asks you a question about, like, if someone came up to me, assuming I was in insurance with you or something in our life, was like, hey, Justine, let's talk about insurance. I'd be like, oh yeah,
not my lane.
Are you pitching me?
Right?
Are you trying to sell me insurance? Because yeah, like I have car insurance. That's about it. Or
honestly,
but
I totally feel that. Not having done your research, not being prepared, that's when you feel it.
And you should, because you are not showing up as prepared as you should be. So you might give wrong information or sound a little off.
Well, hopefully that uncomfortable experience teaches you something, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to feel that way ever again. So if anything, maybe it creates a fear in the sense of like, I don't want to show up as that version of myself again. So I'm afraid of that version. I'm going to be better. Yeah. I'm going to work harder and be better so that I don't be that person again. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned accounting, because the whole time I was in business school, I was a marketing major and just wildly creative. And if during college and university somebody told me that one day my business card was going to say financial advisor with letters behind it, I would have told you to go to the moon. Like it just, and there was a large element of imposter syndrome for me in that industry. I was honestly always afraid of saying the wrong thing because there was so much weight behind what I was saying. I was always afraid of checking the wrong box on the application or messing up somebody's birth date, or a lot of my success and professionalism in that industry actually came from a root of a fear of failure, a fear of imposter syndrome, a fear of letting somebody down.
Well, I mean, it's embarrassing, right? Like if you think you know your facts and you bring them to someone and they're like, well, that's wrong. Right. It's kind of embarrassing, right? You kind of, excuse the word, but you kind of feel stupid in the moment. And I think that anytime I find myself, and I have really leaned into this because I'll say the word, I'm dumb in some areas of life, like geography. No.
How many continents are there?
7?
Yes.
Yeah. Ha. Woo. Yeah, but like I'm proud that I knew that. But don't ask me to name them.
Oh, let's see if we can do it. The girls have a song for it. Asia, Africa, North and South America, Antarctica, Europe, and finally Australia.
Yeah, I didn't know Australia was a continent. See,
right.
I don't know. So, but there are like, and I mean, could I do more research and get my geography knowledge up there? Yeah, I definitely could. I just choose not to because I have better things, or
you're just interested in different things,
or I just don't really have the time to like in my day to day. But anyway, back to the story. If someone brings up a geography question, I'm like going to be the first to be like, I have no idea, but I would love to find out. But like, I have no idea. So just stay in that openness of like, if you don't, Lynsey's one of her favorite sayings is you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay to admit that you don't know. It looks a lot better than you trying to make it up on the spot and then like sounding like you just don't have the correct knowledge.
Getting comfortable with admitting things that you don't know is the fastest way to alleviating fear in those situations. When somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it can be so easy to go to extreme panic of what do I say? What do I do? But the serenity in just saying, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out and get back to you. Follow it up with, I'm going to find out and get back to you. It really takes away from the fear of feeling like you have to know it all, because we don't know it all. Nobody knows it all.
I got this really good bullshit gene from my dad.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I
can see that.
I can like talk my way out of something if I need to, and like bullshit my way through it and pretend like I know something.
It's a great skill.
It is, depending on where you use it, because like I've used it, especially in on-site world, I've used it a few times, and people being like, yeah, do you guys do this? And I'll be like, well, da-da-da-da-da, like throw some words together, and then they call like a week later, and turns out we don't do that. But hey, here's a new business revenue stream. But anyway, no. Yeah, there is power in just owning what you don't know. And like Lynn said, make sure you follow up if you're like, I'm going to get back to you with that information. Just make sure you follow up.
One of the very first things that I teach women in my sales training is to know their client and know their product. Because if they spend time learning, researching, understanding, empathizing with their products, their services, and their client, they will have so much more confidence when they go into opportunities where they can present themselves and sell themselves, and they don't have to be afraid of being in the moment, because they know what they're talking about, they know who they're talking to, and why they're talking about it.
Well, and I think same goes for, when you were talking about that, popped in my head, is job interviews. Like when you go on a job interview, I think imposter syndrome could probably play a pretty big role in there, especially if you're applying for a role larger than you've had yet in your career. Research the company.
Absolutely.
Like research it like it's your homework. Like know their mission statement, know their vision statement, know their CEO, know their CFO, know if they're publicly traded or not. And like just know all of these facts, so when you're sitting in that interview room, you can identify with the company. And that's all it takes, really, maybe, I guess, is coming back to the full question of imposter syndrome, is if you really want to be in that lane, if you want to stand on that stage or in those shoes, do your research to stand in those shoes.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And
straight up. And
it's available to you. Everything is figureoutable.
Was it us who were talking about encyclopedias?
Yes.
Yeah, over the weekend.
Yes.
So, because I was talking to Arya, and Maisie had to do a book report, or like a little school report. They did it on Peru.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, I'm like, yeah, things we don't know they do in school. But anyway, so I asked Arya, I said, well, like, how do you guys get to do book reports in school? And she's like, well, we use our Chromebook time.
Internet.
Cool. So I was like, hey kiddo, do you know what like I used to have to do? So I'm feeling like old, and like my parents, like I had to walk uphill both ways to school. But I'm like, we had to go to the library, find the right book, check it out, read that book, find another book, use encyclopedias. And he's like, what's an encyclopedia? I'm like, well, it was our version of the internet. Like that's all we had, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're so fortunate that, and maybe that's why our generation is a little bit lazier in you figuring out knowledge, because we weren't used to it.
It's not hard. It's at our fingertips.
But we weren't used to that at our growing up, right? It wasn't at our fingertips. So maybe it feels a little bit strange to that it's all just there for you now. But honestly, anything you want to know,
it's right
there. It's there.
Exactly.
And all you have to do is Google it.
Exactly. I love that so much. I just find so much security in knowing that I can figure anything out.
Maybe fact check the webpage.
Exactly.
But I told Lynsey this the other day. I was like on TikTok. This was a couple months ago, and I've seen this video that Bruce Willis died. And I got really upset.
You were really upset.
And I called Tyler and I was like, oh my God, Bruce Willis died. And he's like, did he die hard though? Which is something he would say. But then he's like, babe, I don't actually think he died. Like maybe like go onto your internet browser. Yeah. And he definitely didn't die. So you definitely still need to fact check those things. But yeah, knowledge is power. I don't know. I think we've covered
I wanted
most
to
of my
take
notes,
a quick 5 to talk about our irrational fears.
Ooh.
Like, what are the really crazy, weird things?
Lyns, are we really going there?
Yeah, let's take away the power. Mine is snakes. I don't even know where this fear comes from. I never had like a bad experience with snakes, but it's just like, I think maybe I watched Anaconda too young.
With J-Lo.
With J-Lo, yeah.
Good movie.
I am terrified of snakes.
It's the pit of snakes, isn't it?
Is there a pit of snakes in that movie?
Yeah, at the very end, because remember they're going for like the orchard thingy, and there's like a big breeding nest.
This is not a fear that I ever really have any intention of facing in my life. I live in northern Alberta for a reason.
They die.
Yeah, they don't live here, and
or if they do, they're like garter
little
snakes.
Baby garter snakes. Yeah. I can handle that.
And knowing even if they did bite you, you'd be okay.
Like, yeah, exactly. And like I've lived on an acreage for 6 years, and I've never even seen one. So.
Oh, I mowed one last year.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, I felt kind of bad. I did like rip snake for a minute, but mine's clowns.
Really?
Fucking hate clowns.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Excuse my language. So that comes from, shout out to my sisters, Crystal and Sarah. They're 10 and 12 years respectively older than me. And when I was like, I want to say 5 or 6, they tied me to a chair in the living room and put in the VHS 2-part version of It and made me watch it. And every time I would like close my eyes, they would hit me with a pillow.
Yeah.
Peed my pants in the chair and everything.
Aww.
But I didn't shower for like months. I would only bath, and then I wouldn't drain the bath. I would make my mom drain the bath. And still to this day, I like when I'm showering, I'm like,
so how'd you feel when Arya was
hated it
for Halloween?
Oh my god. And she did it to spite me. Like she knows, because the new the new It came out, and she wanted to watch it, and I was like, fine, here we go, kiddo, I don't care. Like she was pounding me for weeks to watch it, and I'm like, hey, fine, here's my fear, here we go. And we watched the new one, and I was like, whatever, this is not, in my opinion, near as scary. It went like way sci-fi.
Oh, gotcha.
For me, for the first one, I'm like, no, if you want to be scared out of your mind, watch that first one. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I still can't make it through the first one. And I hate clowns. I can remember like one year on Halloween, we went to the bar in Red Deer, and it was like a clown party, and I hid under a table. Like I really don't like them. And John Wayne Gacy like disguised himself as a clown. So there's just like, I'm sorry if we have a clown listener, but this is not my thing.
Because the topic of the podcast is feel the fear and do it anyway. But these are 2 fears that we're pretty sure you can't make a rational case for us to actually face these fears. Nope. So we're not going to, on that note.
Even at the circus last year, we took Arya and Aspen, and the clown started walking around handing out stuff, and I got up and went to the bathroom. I was like, F you, clown.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Eat my kids, but I have to go to the bathroom. Yeah, I was like, no thanks.
Maybe one day we will encounter the opportunity that is just too good, and we'll have to face those fears. I don't know what that could be. But...
Mine's also maggots.
Ew, maggots are revolting. I mean, like, not something again.
No, I'm like, nuh-uh. Like, I'll run.
Yeah.
I'll run real hard. But that's about it. Yeah. Obviously, like, I have tons of irrational fears. If I really start going through them, like, is an airplane going to fly into my house? Probably not. But that's like watching so much. And I think this is like, I didn't even have this in my notes, but I mean, I'm going to take a swing here, and you may very well disagree with me. And, sidebar to that is we were driving with 2 of our girlfriends to Jasper and back this weekend, and we kind of talked about if our podcast was ever controversial, and I'm like, I don't think so, but we're never here to have everyone agree with us or like us or anything like that,
right?
We're just here to simply express our views. So where was I going with that crap? Now I forgot. No, it was fear.
Baby brain.
No, it's gonna come back.
Yeah,
it was fear. Oh, yeah, there we go. See, it came back. The news or like shows. We've talked about how music, scary shows can kind of like change your mood and change your energy. But girlfriends, like I have to tell you, turn off the news. Yeah. If the world is gonna implode, you're gonna know. Like it'll be imploding. Obviously, I think it is important to stay relevant in what's happening in the world with government and politics and all of those things, but I think that it doesn't need to happen as often as we usually do check in. The news is awful for fear. Like And no matter if you're like, I'm right wing, I'm left wing, CTV, NBC, whatever your side is, I'm not here to argue that with you. It's fear mongering. It's literally what it is. And you leave that. I can remember when COVID first started. And Justin Trudeau would do those daily press releases. Yeah. And I would get ready and I would sit on my couch and I'd be like grabbing, and you're just like looking and you're shaking and you're crying. And it's just this like entire body. You're like telling your kids to go to a different room because you don't want them to hear it. And yes, so again, it's good to stay informed, but it's also like there's sometimes too much information. For sure. Like, can we really control all of these things? And does it just make you fearful to walk outside your house? Yeah. So just try and just fear in a general sense. Try to limit those. If you notice that you do watch the news and you leave your living room feeling fearful, don't watch the news. Or there's a show like Criminal Minds. Don't watch it. Like, you know, you have the power to not put that fear in your brain. So
absolutely. I think that's such an excellent point to head into the wrap up of this podcast, is that if you're feeling afraid, figure out what kind of information you're absorbing that's making you feel afraid.
Get to the root.
Exactly. Every fear has a root, and then you can start making your plan from there.
An immersion therapy.
Just put me in a pit of snakes and Justine in a circus of clowns.
Oh my God. There would be some punched out clowns.
Right?
That's for sure. I'd rip off their noses for sure. So creepy.
Well, now we've put that out.
Could you imagine clowns carrying snakes? We'd both just be like,
boing. Oh man, yeah, we'd be out of there so fast.
Bye. Yeah. Not our conference. Yeah, please don't invite us to like a clown conference or a snake conference.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll pass on those ones. Okay, I do have a quote today from Eleanor Roosevelt. Oh, so cool. This is half why I picked this one, because
I love it.
She's a great woman. So, or was. Yes, definitely was. Okay. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this horror or fear. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's so brilliant and relevant, and you do just have to face it.
Do the thing you think you cannot do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And see what happens in your world.
Yeah.
It could be incredible. What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, there's probably lots of things that could happen, but
I mean, your parachute not open, all the things, but yeah.
You know what?
My parachute did open. So
I think that the concept of wondering what if, you know, like if I didn't go all in, if I had more that I could have given, what would have changed? And just going all in is the only way to really know for sure.
Yeah, it's better to go all in and have no regrets than to go half in and have regrets. Regrets are the worst. Yeah. So regrets are like fears you didn't conquer.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So conquer those fears, girlfriends.
Feel the fears and do it anyways.
Okay.
Have a great week.
Bye. See you next week.